The Galactic Scientific Council had seen many mysteries over the centuries. They had unraveled the secrets of wormhole travel, deciphered the language of ancient cosmic entities, and even mapped the lifespan of dying stars with near-perfect precision. But today, they faced something truly impossible, something that threatened the very foundation of their understanding. The cause of this crisis? A single homework assignment from a human student. It all started when the Galactic Academy, an interstellar institution that accepted only the brightest minds from thousands of worlds, decided to include humans in its exchange program. At first, many opposed the idea. Humans were Death-Worlders beings from a hostile planet filled with extreme weather, dangerous predators, and brutal survival conditions. The Council had always viewed them as physically resilient but intellectually unremarkable. Sure, they were clever in war and quick to adapt, but compared to the great scientific races of the galaxy, they were seen as primitive thinkers. Allowing them into the Academy was merely a gesture of goodwill, nothing more. But all those assumptions collapsed the moment a human student submitted a physics homework assignment that sent the galaxy's top minds into chaos. The assignment was supposed to be simple, a basic calculation on gravitational forces acting on planetary bodies. It was meant to test the student's understanding of fundamental physics. The other students, from species with minds fine-tuned for mathematics, had submitted their equations, all of which aligned with the Council's established scientific principles. But the human's solution was different. The equations worked, but they shouldn't have. The numbers obeyed no known laws of physics, and yet, when applied to real-world data, they predicted cosmic events with terrifying accuracy. Black holes, planetary rotations, even the formation of stars, everything the human had written down lined up with reality better than any previous model. At first, the professors assumed it was a mistake. Perhaps the human had copied it from an unknown source. Perhaps it was sheer luck. But as they ran tests and simulations using the students' equations, they found something even more disturbing. The math was revealing hidden forces, unknown interactions between celestial bodies that had never been observed before. The equations weren't just correct. They were beyond anything the Galactic Scientific Council had ever encountered. Panic spread through the Academy. Within hours, the homework assignment was sent to the highest levels of scientific authority. The most advanced artificial intelligences in the galaxy were assigned to break it down. Entire research teams dedicated themselves to disproving it. But every test they ran only confirmed the impossible truth this human student had unknowingly uncovered a new law of physics, something that should have taken entire civilizations thousands of years to discover. News spread like wildfire. Across the stars, scientists debated in hushed whispers. How could a species as young as humanity hold such knowledge? The galactic community had existed for over 100,000 years, with civilizations whose scientific advancements predated humanity's entire history. And yet, here was a single human teenager, casually solving a mystery that had baffled their greatest minds. Was this an anomaly, or had humanity been hiding its true intelligence all along? The Galactic Scientific Council, now in full crisis mode, made a decision. They would travel to Earth and meet the student in person. They needed to understand how this knowledge had been discovered. Had humanity already surpassed them in physics? Had they been studying hidden laws of the universe in secret? If so, what else did they know that the galaxy didn't? The delegation that arrived on Earth consisted of the most brilliant scholars in existence. Some had lifespans spanning millennia, their minds enhanced with cybernetic upgrades that allowed them to process information faster than quantum computers. Others were from species whose entire biology was built for calculation, capable of performing complex mathematics in their heads with the ease of breathing. They expected to meet a genius and intellectual rival unlike any they had ever faced. But when they found the student, they were in for yet another shock. The human was ordinary. A teenager, barely aware of the chaos he had caused across the galaxy, sitting in a classroom filled with other students who seemed just as disinterested in the visitors as he was. When the scientists asked him about the equations, he simply shrugged. "Oh, that? It's just basic physics. Everyone learns it in high school." For the first time in centuries, the galaxy's brightest minds were speechless. They had spent weeks analyzing the equations, questioning their understanding of reality itself, only to be told that this was basic. If this was basic, then what did humanity consider advanced? The delegation insisted on learning more. They requested access to humanity's top scientific institutions, hoping to find the real source of this knowledge. They expected hidden research facilities, secret archives filled with forbidden knowledge. But instead, they were handed textbooks, ordinary school textbooks, used by millions of human children every day. And as they flipped through the pages, they realized the horrifying truth. Humans hadn't just discovered these hidden laws of physics. They had done so centuries ago. They had already incorporated them into their technology, refined them into equations so simple that even their children could understand them. The galactic community had been struggling to reach the peak of scientific understanding, while humanity had already surpassed it without even trying. Panic set in among the scholars. If humans had access to such knowledge, what else had they achieved? Had they secretly developed technologies beyond the comprehension of the rest of the galaxy? Were they holding back their true power, waiting for the right moment to reveal their dominance? In desperation, one of the alien scientists asked the question that haunted them all. If this is basic, then what do humans consider advanced? The human student thought for a moment before grinning. I guess that would be quantum field manipulation, artificial gravity control, or maybe even faster than light travel. The delegation froze. Those were all theoretical fields of study concepts that the greatest alien minds had spent lifetimes trying to understand. For humans, they were college-level topics. In that moment, the galactic scholars realized the terrifying truth. Humans weren't just a young species making quick progress. They weren't a civilization still trying to find its place among the stars. They were already ahead of the rest of the galaxy. And they had been for a very, very long time. And worst of all, they didn't even realize it. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire, reaching the highest levels of scientific institutions within hours. The revelation that a simple human student's homework had defied the known laws of physics was causing a crisis unlike anything the Galactic Scientific Council had ever faced. For centuries, the most advanced civilizations in the universe had believed they were the pinnacle of scientific understanding, their knowledge built upon the achievements of thousands of generations. They had mapped the movements of the stars, calculated the lifespan of galaxies, and even created artificial suns to power their worlds. Yet, in the span of a few days, everything they thought they knew had been thrown into question. If a mere student could uncover an entirely new branch of physics without even trying, what else did humanity know that the rest of the galaxy did not? Meetings were held in the grand halls of the Galactic Scientific Council, where representatives from every major scientific race gathered to discuss the crisis. Holograms of the humans' equations were projected into the air, analyzed by some of the most advanced artificial intelligences in existence, yet none of them could disprove the formulas. Every attempt to dismiss the findings as an error or coincidence was met with the same undeniable conclusion: the math was correct. Not only was it correct, but it predicted cosmic interactions with more accuracy than any existing model. The implications were terrifying. If humanity's basic education was already more advanced than the best research institutions in the galaxy, then what did that mean for the balance of power? What did it mean for the future of interstellar civilization? As the crisis deepened, the galaxy's top scholars began to question everything they had ever learned. Some species, whose entire cultures were built around the pursuit of knowledge, found themselves in an existential dilemma. They had always believed that intelligence was a gradual, universal progression, that no single species could leap ahead of the rest so drastically. Yet humans had done it. Without assistance, without ancient guidance, without even realizing they had surpassed the galaxy's greatest minds. The realization was more than unsettling, it was humiliating. There were civilizations in the galactic, mastered equations that made their research obsolete. Entire scientific careers had been reduced to nothing in an instant. Desperation took hold as the most powerful research institutions scrambled to understand how this had happened. Spies were dispatched to infiltrate human academies, their mission to uncover the source of this unnatural intelligence. They hacked into Earth's scientific databases, expecting to find hidden knowledge, classified documents, or forbidden research that explained humanity's rapid advancements. What they found instead shattered their sanity. Humanity had been publishing this knowledge openly for centuries. The information wasn't hidden in secret laboratories or classified military archives. It was sitting in public libraries, on freely accessible websites, in textbooks used by children. The equations that had thrown the galaxy into chaos were nothing more than standard high school material, concepts that every human was expected to understand before they reached adulthood. The impact of this discovery was devastating. How could a species so young be so advanced? The Galactic Council had always assumed that the progress of civilizations followed a predictable path. First, they discovered fire. Then, they mastered basic engineering. Eventually, after thousands of years, they would unlock the secrets of the universe one step at a time. But humanity had torn through these steps as if they were mere suggestions, achieving in a few centuries what other species had taken millennia to grasp. Worse yet, humans were not just intelligent, they were unpredictable. While other civilizations advanced through careful study and slow refinement, humans seemed to stumble upon breakthroughs by accident. Their greatest discoveries often came not from dedicated research, but from curiosity, experimentation, or even boredom. This made them impossible to predict, and for the first time in recorded history, the galaxy's scientific elite felt fear. Panic spread among the most prestigious universities and research institutions. Entire scientific doctrines were now in question. If humans had already solved problems that the rest of the galaxy still considered impossible, then what else had they figured out? The realization that human children were taught physics that made alien supercomputers struggle to comprehend was beyond unsettling. It was a direct challenge to the established order. Some of the greatest scientific leaders called for immediate restrictions on human knowledge, fearing that if their advancements continued unchecked, they would soon leave the rest of the galaxy in the dust. Others argued that humanity had to be studied, their intelligence mapped and cataloged before it was too late. But there was one problem: humanity didn't see itself as special. When representatives of the Galactic Council finally confronted Earth's scientific leaders, expecting to find secretive masterminds orchestrating humanity's rapid rise, they were instead met with confusion. The humans did not understand why the aliens were so shocked. To them, all of this knowledge was normal, expected, even unimpressive. The equations that had thrown the galaxy into disarray were seen as mere stepping stones to greater questions. When an alien scientist asked a human researcher how their civilization had advanced so quickly, the answer was simple: we just like solving problems. That response terrified the Council more than anything else. Humanity had not developed its knowledge out of necessity, nor had it been driven by survival. They had done it simply because they wanted to. This meant there was no limit to their progress, no end to their pursuit of discovery. Where other species sought knowledge only when it was needed, humanity chased it endlessly, even when there was no practical reason to do so. And that made them the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever encountered. In the following weeks, debates erupted across the stars. Some civilizations wanted to ally with humanity, believing that working alongside them was the only way to avoid being left behind. Others saw the humans as an existential threat, fearing that if they continued to advance unchecked, they would soon become gods among mortals. There were even those who suggested that humanity should be isolated, cut off from the galactic community before their knowledge reshaped the universe itself. But deep down, the Council knew the truth: none of those options would work. Humanity was already ahead. There was no stopping them. The crisis reached its peak. A final report was drafted and sent to every scientific institution in the galaxy. The conclusion was undeniable. The universe was no longer what they thought it was. The laws they had once believed were absolute had been rewritten overnight. And worst of all, humanity had done it without even trying. The Galactic Academy was the most prestigious institution in the universe, home to the brightest minds from thousands of advanced civilizations. For centuries, it had been the peak of scientific and technological progress, a place where only the most intelligent beings could hope to study. Every species that had ever been admitted had spent generations preparing for the honor. To be accepted into the academy was to be recognized as one of the elite, a mind worthy of shaping the future of the galaxy. And then, For reasons beyond anyone's understanding, the Academy admitted humans .at first. The decision was met with polite curiosity. Humanity was still relatively new to the galactic scene, having only recently joined the interstellar community. They were known as Deathworlders, a species that had evolved on a hostile planet filled with deadly creatures, unpredictable weather, and constant survival challenges. Physically, they were impressive, resilient, adaptable, and remarkably hard to kill. But intellectually, the rest of the galaxy saw them as average. They were clever in their own way, capable of surprising ingenuity, but no one truly believed they could compare to the great scientific minds of the Academy. Their acceptance was seen as a diplomatic gesture rather than a genuine recognition of their intelligence. That assumption did not last long. The first sign of trouble came during a routine lecture on cosmic energy fields. The professor, a respected scientist from the Oscari race, spent the entire session explaining how energy waves interacted with gravitational distortions, a theory that had taken his people 5,000 years to perfect. At the end of the lecture, he opened the floor for questions. A human student named Daniel raised his hand. The professor, expecting a simple question, nodded for him to speak. "Yeah, this is interesting and all," Daniel said, "but why aren't you accounting for quantum fluctuations in the field equations? Wouldn't that explain the distortions more accurately?" Silence fell over the room. The professor blinked. The students from other species turned to stare at the human. The Oscari people had been refining their energy field equations for thousands of years. Their models had been considered flawless. And yet, here was a human, a first-year student, pointing out a flaw that had never been noticed before. The professor tried to dismiss it at first, claiming that quantum fluctuations were too minor to affect large-scale energy fields. But Daniel, along with a few other human students, quickly scribbled down calculations on their tablets and presented their findings. The numbers didn't lie. The humans were right. Word spread quickly. Professors, researchers, and scholars across the academy began hearing rumors about the human students. At first, the academic elite assumed it was an exaggeration. But then it kept happening. In a class on gravitational singularities, a human casually pointed out an inconsistency in a widely accepted black hole theory. In an advanced robotics seminar, another human questioned why the Academy's AI system still relied on outdated neural mapping techniques. In a medical sciences course, a human asked why the regeneration treatments used by the most advanced species ignored fundamental principles of human cell repair. It wasn't that humans were intentionally trying to embarrass their professors. They weren't claiming to be geniuses. In fact, every time they pointed something out, they seemed genuinely surprised that the rest of the galaxy hadn't already figured it out. The breaking point came during a high-level symposium attended by the leading scientists of the Galactic Academy. It was a gathering meant to discuss cutting-edge discoveries in astrophysics, attended only by the most brilliant minds in existence. The speaker, a legendary scientist from the HFY race, was presenting a breakthrough in faster-than-light travel, a field that had puzzled the galaxy for ages. His new equations had taken 200 years to develop. The audience waited in breathless anticipation as he projected the equations onto the grand display. Then, from the back of the room, a human voice casually muttered, "Wait, you don't know this?" The words hung in the air like a physical force. Every head turned. The HFY scientist, his confidence shaken. The human sighed, pulled out his tablet, and within seconds displayed the human version of the equations simplified, refined, and far more efficient than what had just been presented as a groundbreaking discovery. The silence that followed was absolute. Some of the most intelligent beings in the universe sat in stunned disbelief, realizing that a field of study that had consumed their lives for generations had already been casually solved by a species they had considered inferior. Panic spread through the scientific community. The greatest minds of the galaxy, the elite scholars who had dedicated their existence to knowledge, were now facing an uncomfortable truth: they were behind. Not just behind, but so far behind that human students were treating their most advanced theories as outdated knowledge. And the most terrifying part? The humans weren't even trying. They weren't flaunting their intelligence. They weren't lording their knowledge over anyone. They genuinely didn't realize they were ahead. The crisis reached the highest levels of the Galactic Scientific Council. Meetings were held in secret, debates grew heated, and proposals were made to control the spread of human knowledge before it completely disrupted the established order. But deep down, everyone knew the truth. There was no stopping it. Humanity had already left the rest of the galaxy behind. And they hadn't even noticed. In the days that followed, attempts were made to integrate human knowledge into the Academy's curriculum. But the more they learned, the more they realized how much they didn't know. It was an intellectual disaster, an existential shock that shattered the pride of the galaxy's scientific elite. And somewhere on Earth, unaware of the chaos they had caused, high school students continued to study their textbooks, completely oblivious to the fact that they were rewriting the future of the universe without even trying. For centuries, the Galactic Council had enforced strict regulations on knowledge. Every new species that joined the interstellar community was carefully monitored, their scientific progress catalogued and controlled. It was a necessary measure, they believed, to maintain stability. If a civilization advanced too quickly, it could disrupt the delicate balance of power. If it remained too primitive, it risked becoming obsolete. Knowledge, in the grand scheme of things, had to be regulated. But then came Earth, unpredictable, uncontrollable, and worst of all, unregulated. At first, humanity had been dismissed as just another death world species, notable for their resilience but unremarkable in intelligence. Their history was chaotic, their technology a strange mixture of brilliance and recklessness. Yet, despite their late entry into the galactic stage, they rose at an impossible speed. They adapted, innovated, and evolved faster than any species before them. And soon, whispers began to spread throughout the galaxy, whispers of something terrifying. Humanity's knowledge was different. It wasn't just advanced, it was unrestricted. Unlike the rest of the galaxy, which carefully guarded its scientific breakthroughs, humanity had no concept of forbidden knowledge. They shared everything, documented everything, experimented with everything. There were no ancient laws restricting their curiosity, no council deciding which discoveries were too dangerous to pursue. While other civilizations hesitated to explore the unknown, humans had already mapped it out, analyzed it, and turned it into a school lesson. The realization sent shockwaves through the scientific community. It started with a simple request. The HFY Research Division, one of the oldest and most respected scientific institutions in the galaxy, requested access to Earth's medical databases. They expected to find basic biological research, perhaps a few minor advancements in disease treatment. What they found instead was horrifying. Humanity had not only mastered genetic engineering, but they had actively experimented with it on themselves. They had altered their own DNA, enhanced their bodies, created cures for conditions the rest of the galaxy still considered incurable. They had even mapped the very code of life itself, something that no other species had ever accomplished. The implications were staggering. The HFY had spent thousands of years refining their medical technology, and yet here was humanity treating genetic manipulation as a common science project. The Galactic Council immediately moved to classify the information. If other species discovered that humans had unlocked the secrets of biological perfection, it could lead to chaos. Wars could be fought over that knowledge. Entire civilizations could collapse under the weight of their own inadequacy. And so, the first restriction was placed. Earth's biological research was deemed forbidden. But it didn't stop there. The Avari astrophysicists, one of the most advanced spacefaring species, had always prided themselves on their mastery of quantum physics. They believed they were the closest to unlocking the true nature of the universe. Then they accessed humanity's physics databases. The information they found defied belief. Humans had solved quantum entanglement centuries ago. They had theories for manipulating space-time that made the Avari's greatest discoveries seem childish in comparison. Concepts that had baffled the greatest minds of the galaxy were written in simple terms in human university textbooks. The Avari scientists, upon realizing how far behind they were, fell into despair. Some even resigned from their positions, unable to cope with the humiliation. Once again, the Galactic Council intervened. All of Earth's research on physics was declared classified. No species was allowed access to it. The knowledge was too dangerous. If the wrong hands got hold of it, entire civilizations could collapse. But it was already too late. The secret was out. Humanity had knowledge that the rest of the galaxy wasn't prepared for. And now, every major power wanted it. Spies were sent to Earth. They infiltrated human universities, hacked into databases, disguised themselves as scholars. Their mission was simple: steal as much knowledge as possible before the Council could shut everything down. But what they found disturbed them to their very core. Humans did not hoard their discoveries. They didn't restrict information to a privileged few. They shared it freely, openly, without hesitation. Some of the most dangerous knowledge in the universe was available to anyone who bothered to look. One spy, a highly trained intelligence officer from the Craxian Dominion, had spent years undercover in a human research facility. He had expected secrecy, high-level security, encrypted files. Instead, he found students casually discussing theories that could destabilize entire civilizations over coffee. He found scientific journals publishing discoveries that could reshape the fabric of reality, available for free to anyone with an internet connection. He found children learning the foundations of technologies that other species considered impossible. And that was when the true horror set in. It wasn't that humanity had forbidden knowledge. It was that, to them, nothing was forbidden. The Galactic Council tried to suppress it. They banned Earth's research from interstellar networks. They restricted human scientists from sharing their discoveries with other species. They tried to bury the knowledge, to make it disappear. But the problem wasn't just the information itself, it was the humans. They wanted to share. They saw knowledge as something to be explored, to be expanded upon, to be given freely to those who sought it. The more the Council tried to restrict them, the more humanity pushed forward, uncovering new secrets, solving mysteries that the galaxy had long abandoned as unsolvable. And then came the final realization, the most terrifying truth of all. Humanity was just getting started. If they had already surpassed the rest of the galaxy in so many fields, despite their young age as a spacefaring race, what would they accomplish in the next 100 years? The next 1,000? They had no barriers to their progress. No ancient laws holding them back. No fears of the unknown. They would continue to learn, to discover, to innovate. And the rest of the galaxy would never be able to keep up. The crisis in the scientific community became a crisis of survival. Some species wanted to form alliances with humanity to secure a place alongside them before it was too late. Others whispered of darker solutions of sabotage, of forced isolation, of war. But deep down, they all knew the truth. Humanity's knowledge could not be contained. The universe had changed forever. And there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. For centuries, the Galactic Union had maintained a strict hierarchy among the spacefaring civilizations. There were the elder races, ancient species that had ruled the stars for millennia, their knowledge and technology unmatched. Then came the rising powers, younger civilizations still proving their worth, eager to claim a place among the greats. Finally, there were the newcomers, primitive worlds that had only just begun to understand the vastness of the universe. Every species was ranked, tested, and measured, their place determined by centuries of scientific, military, and economic achievements. When humanity first arrived, they were placed at the bottom. A death world species? Certainly, but nothing special. They had only just begun traveling between the stars. Their technology was crude, their knowledge fragmented. The elder races saw no threat in them. The rising powers barely acknowledged their existence. Humans were just another race trying. Every 10 years, the Galactic Union hosted a grand event, a test of intelligence, engineering, and strategy. It was not meant to be a true competition, but rather a way for species to display their progress, to measure themselves against one another. The elder races always won, of course. They had thousands of years of experience, their minds honed by centuries of research. The rising powers competed fiercely, hoping to climb the ranks. The newcomers? They rarely made it past the first stage. It was a tradition, an unspoken rule of the galaxy. And then humanity entered. Their first appearance was met with amusement. What could such a young species possibly achieve? The first challenge was a mathematical problem that had baffled scholars for centuries, a complex equation tied to the nature of dark energy. The best minds of the galaxy had been working on it for generations, refining their theories, struggling to uncover its secrets. The elder races took their time, presenting their carefully crafted solutions. The rising powers followed, their answers respectable but flawed. Then a human raised his hand. We solved this a while ago," he said, awkwardly showing his screen. "It's in our standard astrophysics curriculum." Silence. The judges checked the answer. It was correct. Worse, it was simplified, cleaner than anything the others had presented. The elder races, for the first time in centuries, were speechless. The next challenge was an engineering problem. The task was to design a self-sustaining power source for deep space colonies. The best teams worked for weeks, constructing elaborate blueprints, carefully balancing efficiency and stability. The humans? They built a functioning prototype in 3 days. By the time the final challenge arrived, the laughter had stopped. The elder races no longer looked down on humanity. The rising powers no longer ignored them. Everyone watched in uneasy silence as the humans approached the final test, a strategy simulation designed to evaluate military and tactical thinking. It was a war game, a battle scenario meant to simulate real interstellar conflict. The elder races had played it for centuries, refining their strategies to near perfection. The rising powers had studied every possible move, memorizing patterns and responses. The humans? They broke the simulation. Instead of playing by the expected rules, they rewrote the entire approach to warfare. They used tactics no one had ever considered, adapting in real time, creating strategies so unpredictable that the AI running the simulation failed to keep up. When the final score was tallied, the humans had not only won, they had shattered every record in the competition's history. Panic spread through the Galactic Union. Humanity had risen too fast. It was impossible. They had been ranked as a low-tier species, barely worthy of notice, yet they had surpassed civilizations thousands of years older than them. The elder races called for emergency meetings. The rising powers reevaluated their alliances. Fear crept into the minds of those who had always believed themselves superior. And yet, the humans seemed confused. They did not celebrate. They did not gloat. When asked how they had achieved so much in such little time, their answer was simple. We weren't trying to compete. The words struck the galaxy like a thunderbolt. Humanity had never seen the Galactic Union's tests as competitions. They weren't trying to prove themselves. They weren't striving to be the best. They were simply curious. When faced with a problem, they solved it not for prestige, not for power, but because they wanted to know the answer. When given a challenge, they overcame it not for recognition, but because it was in their nature to push forward. The elder races, who had spent millennia refining their knowledge, realized they had become stagnant. The rising powers, who had fought desperately to climb the hierarchy, realized they had been chasing a meaningless goal. The entire galactic order had been built on competition, on measuring success through ranks and dominance. But humanity? They had never cared about any of that. They were not here to play the game. They were here to change the rules. And the galaxy would never be the same again.